It was one of those quiet evenings when the sky looked soft and tired, just like her. She sat on the edge of her small bed, holding her baby close, humming softly to keep the little one asleep. The room was barely lit by a weak bulb, and the air smelled faintly of milk and damp clothes. Outside, the sounds of cars faded into the distance, leaving only silence. She stared at the cracked ceiling and wondered how her life had changed so much in such a short time. Only a year ago, she was in school, laughing with friends, dreaming about going to college and becoming something in life. She used to imagine a bright future, a job, a small apartment, freedom, and maybe a family one day. But she never imagined that day would come so soon, or that she'd face it all alone. She became a mother at 17. When she found out she was pregnant, she thought everything would still be okay. She believed love could fix everything. But love faded faster than she thought. The boy she trusted disappeared the moment she needed him most. His phone went silent, his promises vanished, and she was left standing with a baby growing inside her and a world turning against her. At first, her parents tried to help, but their patience broke after months of arguments and disappointment. They couldn't accept how life had changed. They stopped talking to her except for short, cold words. One evening, her mother told her she needed to leave and figure out her own life. That night, with nothing but a small bag of clothes and her baby's things, she left home and went to stay in a cheap rented room in the older part of town. That room became her world. A single bed, a small stove, and a window that didn't open right. The walls were stained and the floor creaked with every step. But to her, it was still better than being unwelcome somewhere else. She learned how to make things stretch. 1 can of milk had to last 2 days. 1 pack of diapers had to be used carefully. She even cut her meals down to 1 a day so her baby could have enough. She found work at a nearby cafe, cleaning tables and washing dishes. The pay was small, but it helped her keep the lights on. Sometimes she carried her baby to work because she couldn't find anyone to watch her child. Some people looked at her with pity, others with judgment. A few whispered things she tried not to hear. Every day she told herself not to cry in public. She wanted to appear strong, even if inside she was falling apart. There were nights when she couldn't sleep because the baby wouldn't stop crying. She'd pace around the room, whispering gently, trying to calm the tiny body in her arms. Sometimes she cried too, quietly so no one would hear. She didn't hate her baby, never. She loved that child more than anything in the world. What hurt her most was the feeling that no one else loved them back. Every morning started the same. She'd wake up before sunrise, wash her face in cold water because the heater barely worked, and prepare to leave. She'd wrap her baby carefully, walk to the daycare center, and drop the little one off before rushing to work. The distance wasn't long, but it felt endless on tired feet. Her shoes were worn out, her hands rough from soap and water. Still, she smiled at her baby before leaving, whispering, "I'll be back soon." The cafe wasn't easy. The manager was strict, always watching, always finding faults. The customers didn't know or care about her story. She moved quickly, cleaned fast, and kept quiet. She didn't complain because she couldn't afford to lose the job. Once, when she came late because the bus broke down, the manager warned her that another delay would cost her the job. That night, she walked all the way home to save bus fare for emergencies. Despite everything, there were small moments of peace. When her baby smiled for the first time, when she found an old picture of her school days and remembered how simple life used to be, when she cooked a proper meal once a week as a small celebration that they survived another 7 days. But the struggle grew heavier with time. Bills piled up. The rent went up. The landlord started knocking more often, reminding her that he couldn't wait forever. One evening, after paying for diapers and formula, she realized she didn't have enough for rent. She counted her coins again and again, hoping she'd made a mistake. She hadn't. The truth was there, she was short by half. She begged for a few more days, but the landlord shrugged and said, "Everyone's got problems." That night she sat on the bed with her baby, feeling like the walls were closing in. She didn't know what to do. The world outside felt too big, too cold. The next morning, she went to the local charity office, hoping they could help with rent or food. She waited for 2 hours in a crowded hallway, holding her baby close. When it was her turn, the lady behind the desk said their funds were limited, and they could only help urgent medical cases. The young mother nodded, thanked her, and left, though her eyes filled with tears the moment she stepped outside. She sat on a bench nearby, trying to stay calm. Her baby was sleeping, unaware of everything. She thought about calling her parents, but she knew what they'd say, that this was her choice, her mistake. She couldn't bear to hear it again. Sometimes she imagined what it would be like if things were different, if she had someone who cared, if she could go back to school, if her baby could grow up in a real home. These dreams kept her going even when her body was too tired to move. One evening, after a long shift at work, she came home and found a letter under her door. It was another warning from the landlord. He gave her 3 days to pay or leave. She looked around her tiny room, the baby's blanket on the chair, the empty bottles, the stack of unpaid bills, and felt a sharp pain in her chest. She didn't cry this time. She just sat quietly, holding her baby, staring at nothing. Later that night, as the baby slept, she whispered softly, "I don't know how long I can keep this up, but I'll never stop trying." She brushed her hand over the baby's small fingers and smiled faintly. "You didn't ask for any of this. I'll make sure you have a better life than mine." The days passed slowly. She managed to borrow a little money from a coworker, enough to keep her room for another week. She started working extra hours, cleaning after closing time, sometimes skipping her lunch break to earn a little more. Her body ached, but she didn't complain. Her only focus was keeping her child safe. There was one moment that stood out that week. She was walking home in the rain, carrying her baby under a thin shawl. The road was slippery and she almost fell. A car slowed down beside her and a voice asked if she needed help. She quickly shook her head, clutching her baby tighter, afraid of strangers. The car stayed for a second, then drove away. She didn't know it then, but that small moment would later change everything. That night she lay in bed listening to the rain. Drops leaked from the ceiling, landing on the floor with soft taps. She watched them fall and thought about the car, the voice, the world beyond her small room. She wondered if kindness still existed somewhere. She wanted to believe it did. She closed her eyes and tried to sleep, but her mind kept racing. She remembered the life she once dreamed of, the girl she used to be, and the strength she was forced to find. Life had taken almost everything from her, but it hadn't taken her will. When morning came, she woke before the alarm as usual. The sky was still dark and the air was cold. She wrapped her baby in a blanket and whispered, "It's a new day, little one. Let's try again." She didn't know that this new day would soon bring something unexpected, something that would change her life in a way she never imagined. But for now, all she could do was keep walking, one step at a time, holding on to the only thing that kept her strong: hope. Morning came too early, as always. The young mother opened her eyes before the alarm buzzed. She had trained herself to wake up before it rang, afraid it might disturb her baby. The little one was sleeping peacefully, wrapped in a small blanket, breathing softly. For a moment, she just watched that tiny face and smiled. It was the only quiet moment she had before the day started rushing again. The floor was cold as she got up. She warmed some milk on the small stove, then packed a few things in an old bag: baby clothes, a feeding bottle, a cloth for burping. Everything she owned seemed to be wearing out faster than she could replace it. Her shoes had small cracks. Her bag strap was stitched twice already, but she didn't care. As long as they worked, she used them. The sky was still gray when she stepped outside. The streets were wet from the night's rain. She walked carefully, balancing her baby in one arm, holding the umbrella with the other. The daycare was a 20-minute walk away. By the time she reached, her shoulders already ached. She handed her baby over to the caretaker and kissed the little forehead, whispering, "Be good, I'll be back soon." Then she walked to the cafe. Her shift started at 7 a.m. She had 10 minutes to spare. Inside, the smell of coffee and fresh bread filled the air, something that always made her stomach tighten from hunger. The manager nodded at her without smiling as usual. "You're early," he said. She nodded back and went straight to the sink. The day started like every other: washing dishes, wiping tables, sweeping floors. Customers came and went, most of them too busy to even notice her. But she didn't mind. She liked the noise, the movement. It distracted her from thinking too much. By noon, her hands were wrinkled from soap water and her back hurt. She didn't stop, though. Every hour she worked meant another meal, another day with a roof. She didn't have time for rest. Sometimes she felt invisible, but that invisibility helped her survive. No one expected her to talk. No one asked too many questions. That day, during her short lunch break, she sat outside behind the cafe, eating a small sandwich she brought from home. The air smelled of coffee beans and smoke from passing cars. She closed her eyes for a second, letting the warmth of the sun touch her face. It was one of those moments when she tried to believe things would somehow get better. After her shift, she walked back to the daycare, tired but smiling. The moment she saw her baby's face, all the pain from the day faded. That little smile gave her energy again. She carried the baby home, whispering stories along the way, pretending they were on an adventure. But deep down, she was always scared. Scared that one small problem could break everything she had worked so hard to hold together. That fear came true one afternoon. Her baby had been coughing for 2 days. She thought it was just a cold, but the coughing grew worse. The baby's breathing sounded tight, and a soft wheezing noise came with every breath. Her heart sank. She took the child to a small clinic nearby. The doctor said the baby needed medicine and rest, maybe even a hospital visit if things didn't improve. She asked for the cost, and the doctor's answer made her feel weak. The treatment would cost more than she had saved in 2 months. She thanked the doctor and stepped outside, her hands shaking. She sat on a bench outside the clinic, holding her baby close. The child's eyes looked tired, and every cough made her heart break a little more. She went home and checked her small jar of savings. It wasn't enough. Not even close. She thought about borrowing again from her coworker, but she already owed her money. She thought about selling her phone, but it was too old to get much for it. That night she didn't sleep. She sat by her baby's side, counting every breath, afraid of what could happen. The next morning she decided to ask for help from a charity center across town. She had heard they sometimes helped single mothers. She packed a small bag, wrapped her baby warmly, and took the bus. When she reached, the waiting hall was full of people. Old men, women with children, some sitting on the floor. She waited for hours, rocking her baby, hoping someone would listen. Finally, her turn came. The lady at the desk listened for a minute and then shook her head. "I'm sorry," she said. "We've already reached our limit for this month. Please come again next month." The young mother tried to explain, her voice trembling, but the woman only said, "There's nothing we can do right now." She nodded politely, thanked her, and left. She didn't want to cry there. Outside, she sat under a tree, holding her baby tightly. The little one was sleeping again, the breathing still heavy. She wanted to scream, but no sound came out. People walked by, busy with their own lives, not noticing her at all. For the first time in a long while, she felt truly invisible. The bus ride back home was quiet. She looked out the window the whole way, trying to think of what to do next. The reflection of her tired face in the glass scared her. She didn't look like the girl she used to be. Her eyes had grown older than her age. When she got off the bus, it started to rain again. She had no umbrella this time. She wrapped the baby with her shawl and hurried home, getting drenched. On the way, she passed the hospital again. The bright lights inside made her stop for a second. She thought about walking in and begging someone for help, but she had no money and pride held her back. So she sat outside on the hospital steps, the rain falling harder now. She whispered to herself, "I'll find a way. I always do." A few people walked by, some looked at her for a moment, then turned away. No one stopped. Except one person. A man who had been walking out of the hospital noticed her sitting there. He was tall, with a calm face, wearing a cap and a jacket. He paused for a second, watching her, trying to keep the baby dry under the shawl. Something about the way she held the child caught his attention. He walked over slowly and said, "Hey, are you okay?" She looked up, startled. She didn't know what to say. She just nodded quickly and said, "I'm fine, just waiting for the rain to stop." He hesitated, then crouched down beside her. "You sure? You look like you've had a long day." She didn't answer. She kept her eyes down, embarrassed. She wasn't used to kindness from strangers. He noticed the baby's breathing and asked softly, "Is your baby sick?" Her throat tightened. "Just a cold," she said quickly, though she knew it wasn't true. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a card. "I know someone inside who can help. Come with me. You don't have to worry about the cost." She shook her head. "No, please. I can't take money from strangers." He didn't push. He just said sometimes accepting help isn't weakness. It's the first step to getting better. Then he smiled, a small but genuine smile, and walked toward the entrance. She sat there thinking. The rain kept falling. Her baby coughed again, the sound sharp in the quiet night. She looked at the hospital doors, then at her child, then back at the card in her hand. Her fingers trembled as she stood up. When she walked inside, the man was waiting. He helped her fill out a form, talked to the nurse, and made sure the baby got checked immediately. The doctor examined the child and prescribed medicine. The man quietly paid the bill before she could even ask how much it was. When she realized what he had done, she felt tears well up in her eyes. "Why would you help me?" she asked softly. He shrugged. "Because I've seen someone struggle like you before. And they didn't give up." She didn't know how to thank him. She said, "I don't even know your name." He smiled again. "You don't need to. Just promise me you'll take care of that little one. You're stronger than you think." Before she could say anything else, he nodded and walked away into the rain. She stood there, holding her baby close, watching him disappear down the street. Something about him felt familiar, but she couldn't place it. She looked down at her child, who was now resting peacefully, the cough quieter. That night, for the first time in weeks, she felt a strange warmth inside her chest. Not just relief, but hope. She didn't know who that man really was, but somehow, she felt their paths would cross again. And when they did, her life would never be the same. The night after she met the stranger, she couldn't stop thinking about him. She replayed the moment again and again. The way he spoke calmly, the quiet kindness in his eyes, and how he didn't wait to be thanked. He had paid the hospital bill like it was nothing, then disappeared without even telling her his name. She tried to sleep, but her mind was restless. Every time her baby moved, she woke up to check. The coughing had eased a little thanks to the medicine. She gently stroked the baby's tiny hand and whispered, "Someone helped us today. Maybe the world isn't all bad after all." The next morning, she went to work as usual. She was tired, but her heart felt lighter. When she arrived at the cafe, she noticed a newspaper on the counter. On the front page was a photo of the man she had met. The same jacket, the same face. Her hands froze. The headline said something about a legendary sports figure visiting his hometown for a charity event. She couldn't believe it. The man who had helped her, the one who quietly paid her hospital bill, was someone everyone knew. She stared at the picture, her mind spinning. She had seen his face on TV before, but never paid attention. Now it felt unreal. She didn't tell anyone at work. She knew they wouldn't believe her. It felt like a dream, that someone so famous had stopped in the rain to help her. But deep down, she also wondered why. Why her? Out of all the people in that city, why did he choose to help a struggling mother sitting alone outside a hospital? That evening, after picking up her baby, she decided to go for a short walk before heading home. The city lights were glowing softly and the streets were quiet. She thought about everything she had been through, the nights of hunger, the loneliness, the judgment, and then about that one act of kindness that suddenly made her feel seen. She whispered to her baby, "One day I'll thank him properly." The next few days passed quickly. The baby's health improved and she felt more at peace. Then, one afternoon, while she was cleaning tables at the cafe, someone tapped her shoulder gently. She turned around and her heart nearly stopped. It was him, the same man from the hospital, standing there with a warm smile. "I was hoping I'd find you here," he said softly. She didn't know what to say. You came back?" "I wanted to make sure your baby's okay," he said. "And I thought maybe we could talk." She nodded, still stunned. Her coworker stared from behind the counter, recognizing him immediately. But he didn't act like a celebrity. He spoke to her as if they were old friends. When her shift ended, they sat outside on a bench near the cafe. He told her he had been visiting the city for a charity project. "I saw you that night and couldn't walk away," he said quietly. "You reminded me of someone, my mother. She was young when she had me. She struggled too. People judged her, but she never gave up." The young woman listened, barely blinking. She couldn't believe how gentle his voice sounded. There was no pride or distance in him, just a kind honesty. He continued, "My mother passed away years ago, but everything I have today, my career, my peace, came from her strength. When I saw you holding your baby like that, I saw the same fire." She looked down, holding back tears. "I'm not strong. I just don't have a choice," he shook his head. "That's exactly what strength is. Doing what you have to, even when you're tired, even when no one believes in you." For a long time, they just sat there quietly. The sun was setting, painting the sky orange and gold. People walked by, some glancing at them, unaware that the famous man sitting there wasn't talking about himself but about life, struggle, and hope. Before leaving, he gave her a folded note. "Come to this address tomorrow morning," he said. "It's a small community center I run with a few friends. I think there's something there that could help you." She didn't understand what he meant, but she nodded. He smiled again, waved gently, and walked away. That night, she stared at the note on her table. The address was only a few streets away from where she lived. She wanted to go, but part of her was scared. What if it was a mistake? What if she didn't belong there? But something inside her whispered that this could be the beginning of something new. The next morning, she dressed neatly, wrapped her baby in a soft blanket, and walked to the address. The building looked old but well kept. There was a small garden outside and a sign that read, "Hope Foundation, Helping Hands for Single Mothers." She stood there for a moment, frozen. Was this really happening? Inside, the air smelled of fresh paint and flowers. There were shelves of baby clothes, a small daycare room, and a notice board filled with photos of smiling women and children. A kind-looking woman approached her. "You must be the one he told us about," she said warmly. "Come in, please." He appeared a few minutes later, smiling like before. "I'm glad you came," he said. "This place is for mothers like you, people who just need a little support to get back on their feet." He showed her around, introducing her to a few other young mothers who were learning skills, sewing, typing, cooking, even basic business training. "We try to give everyone a chance to build a life again," he said. "Would you like to be part of it?" She didn't even have to think. "Yes," she said quietly. Over the next few weeks, her life started to change. She began working part-time at the foundation, helping with cleaning and organizing supplies. In return, they provided free daycare for her baby, groceries, and even helped her enroll in a short evening course for office work. Every time she saw the man, he treated her with the same kindness, never talking about fame or success. He'd ask about her classes, her baby, and if she was eating properly. She often wondered why he cared so much. One afternoon, after finishing her shift at the foundation, she found him sitting in the garden. She sat beside him quietly. "I don't know how to thank you," she said softly. "You've done so much for me." He looked at her with calm eyes. "You don't have to thank me. You did the hard part. You kept going when you could have given up." She smiled faintly. "Sometimes I still feel like I don't belong anywhere." He nodded. "I used to feel that way too when I was young. But belonging isn't about where you are. It's about what you create. You're building something for your child." At home, his words stayed with her. That night, as she put her baby to sleep, she looked around the small room and realized it didn't feel so lonely anymore. She had people who cared now. She had work, support, and hope. Things she once thought she'd never have again. A few days later, the foundation held a small community event. She helped set up chairs and tables, not realizing it was being filmed for a charity documentary. When she saw how many people came, mothers, children, volunteers, her heart filled with pride. At one point, the man went up on stage to speak. He talked about second chances, about how strength isn't measured by fame or money, but by the courage to keep moving forward. Then, to her surprise, he looked directly at her in the audience and said, "Real heroes aren't on screens. They're the ones who wake up every day and fight for someone they love." The crowd clapped, but she sat still, tears filling her eyes. She had never been called a hero before. After the event, she thanked him again. He smiled and said, "You earned every bit of it." When she walked home that evening, she carried her baby in her arms, and for the first time, she felt light. Not because life had suddenly become easy, but because she finally believed she wasn't alone anymore. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew one thing: her story wasn't just about struggle anymore. It was about change, kindness, and the start of something she never expected. A chance to rebuild her life, one small step at a time, and somewhere deep inside, she began to understand that this man, this quiet legend, hadn't just rescued her from hardship. He had helped her rescue herself. The weeks at the foundation passed quietly, and slowly, her life began to find balance again. Every morning, she woke up with a sense of purpose she hadn't felt in a long time. She had work to go to, people who treated her kindly, and a safe place for her baby. The sound of laughter from the daycare, the smell of coffee brewing in the small kitchen, and the chatter of other mothers filled her days with a warmth she had almost forgotten existed. She worked hard, just as she always had, but now the effort felt meaningful. When she cleaned the rooms, she did it with pride. When she helped sort donations, she smiled at the thought that another struggling mother might find hope through the same doors she once walked in through. Scared and unsure, the man who had helped her visited the foundation often. He was always calm and friendly, talking to everyone without showing any trace of his fame. Most people there respected him deeply, but what struck her most was how humble he remained. He never acted like a hero. He treated everyone like equals, the volunteers, the staff, and even the new mothers who came in with tears still fresh on their faces. Whenever he spoke to her, he listened carefully as if her words truly mattered. One afternoon, he asked how she was doing with her classes. She smiled shyly and said she had just learned how to type official letters and use spreadsheets. He nodded with approval. "That's good," he said. "Knowledge gives you choices, and choices give you freedom." Those words stayed with her. Every night after putting her baby to sleep, she studied a little. It wasn't easy. Sometimes she was too tired to keep her eyes open, but she kept going. She wanted to build a future that didn't depend on luck or charity. She wanted to stand on her own feet. At the foundation, she also began helping new mothers who arrived in the same state she once had. She'd greet them with a smile, offer tea, and share her own story when she saw fear in their eyes. "I know how it feels," she'd tell them, "but you're not alone anymore." Her quiet kindness gave others courage, and soon she became someone people looked up to, though she didn't realize it herself. One day, the man asked her to meet him in his office at the foundation. When she arrived, he was sitting behind a simple desk, not covered in awards or photos like she expected, but plain, almost empty. He gestured for her to sit. "I've been watching your progress," he said kindly. "You've grown stronger, not just in work but in the way you carry yourself." She looked down, embarrassed. "I'm just trying to do my best," he smiled. "That's exactly why you'll go far. I want to offer you something. We're opening a new branch of the foundation in another neighborhood. I'd like you to help manage it." Her mouth fell open. "Me? Manage? I don't think I can do that." He leaned forward. "You can. You've already proven it. You understand what these women go through because you've lived it. That makes you the perfect person for the job." She didn't know what to say. A few months ago, she couldn't even pay rent. Now someone trusted her to lead something important. Her heart felt full. "I'll do my best," she finally whispered. "I know you will," he said with a smile. "You already are." From that day on, her days became busier but more fulfilling. She worked closely with the foundation team, helping set up the new center. She learned how to handle paperwork, organize events, and even speak in small gatherings. Every challenge scared her at first, but each time she succeeded, her confidence grew. Sometimes she'd find herself standing outside the building at sunset, watching mothers arrive with their children, just as she once had. She'd remember that night outside the hospital, how hopeless she had felt, and how one person's kindness had turned everything around. One afternoon, she was sitting in the daycare room, watching her baby play with other children. The man walked in quietly and sat beside her. They watched the kids for a while, laughing softly at their little fights over toys. He said, "You've done well. I can see the change in you." She looked at him and said honestly, "You're the reason I got a second chance." He shook his head. "No, you're the reason you did. I just showed up at the right time. The rest, and that was all you," she smiled. "Still, I wouldn't be here without you." He didn't argue. He just said, "Then promise me something. When someone else needs help like you once did, don't turn away. Be that hand they can hold." She nodded without hesitation. "I will. Always." Months went by, and the new branch of the foundation started to thrive. She became known as someone who could be trusted, reliable, kind, and strong. She still struggled some days. Life didn't suddenly become perfect. There were bills to pay, days when her child got sick again, moments when exhaustion caught up with her. But now she had a network of people who cared. She had purpose. One evening, the foundation organized a small dinner to celebrate the success of the new center. She was nervous because she had been asked to give a short speech. Standing on the small stage, looking at the faces in front of her, mothers, volunteers, and the man who had believed in her, she felt tears building up. Her voice trembled as she spoke. "A year ago, I didn't believe life could get better. I thought my story had already ended. But sometimes all it takes is one person to show you that you're still capable of changing it. I was rescued when I had nothing left, but that rescue wasn't just about money or help. It was about being seen, being believed in. The room was silent. Listening closely, she continued, "Now, every time I see a scared young mother walk through those doors, I remember how I once sat in the rain, thinking no one cared. And I tell her, you're not alone. You can rise again." When she finished, everyone clapped warmly. She caught the man's eyes across the room. He was smiling proudly. Later that night, when most people had left, she found him standing outside near the parking lot, looking at the city lights. She walked up to him and said quietly, "You were right. Helping others helps you heal too." He nodded slowly. That's the secret most people don't learn soon enough. Then, after a pause, he said something she never forgot. "One day, people won't know me for what I did in the past. They'll know me for the people I helped become strong, like you." Her eyes filled with tears. "You've changed so many lives." He smiled gently. "So will you." The next morning, she returned to the foundation early. The sunrise painted the walls golden. She walked through the rooms, touching the chairs, the toys, the posters on the wall. All signs of life, all symbols of hope. Her baby laughed from the daycare, calling for her. She picked the little one up and whispered, "See? We made it." That day, she sat by the window during lunch, watching mothers come and go. Some looked tired, some hopeful. She remembered how she used to hide her pain behind quiet smiles, and how one stranger's compassion had pulled her out of that darkness. She no longer felt like the girl who was lost and scared. She had turned into someone who could stand firm, make decisions, and help others stand too. The man's words echoed in her heart. "You're stronger than you think." And he was right. By the time the day ended, she was helping a new mother fill out forms for support. The woman's hands trembled, her eyes full of worry. She placed a comforting hand on her shoulder and said, "It's going to be okay. I know it doesn't feel like it now, but you'll find your way. Just take it one day at a time." The woman smiled faintly through her tears, the same way she once had months ago when someone said similar words to her. That evening, as she locked up the building and stepped out into the cool air, she felt a deep peace. She looked up at the sky and thought about how far she had come, from a lonely mother fighting to survive to a woman leading others toward hope. She didn't need to be saved anymore. She had become the one offering rescue, and though she would always be grateful to the man who believed in her, she finally understood the truth he had been teaching her all along, that real strength comes not from what others give you, but from what you choose to do with the second chance you're given. Years passed quietly, yet everything had changed. The young mother who once struggled to find shelter now stood tall as the director of one of the city's most trusted community foundations. She wasn't rich or famous, but her life carried a deep sense of meaning that money could never buy. The foundation had grown into several centers scattered across the city, each helping single mothers and children find a new start. Every room carried the same warmth she once felt the first day she walked into that place years ago. The smell of food being cooked in the kitchen, the laughter of kids playing, the comforting voices of women helping each other. It was like a heartbeat, steady, alive, and full of hope. She had built her life around that feeling. Every morning she'd arrive early, greet the staff, check on the daycare, and walk through the halls to make sure everything was running smoothly. Her baby, once so small and fragile, was now a bright young child running around with endless curiosity. Seeing that energy always reminded her why she kept going. She never forgot where she came from. No matter how busy her schedule got, she made sure to talk with every new mother who walked in. She'd sit down, offer tea, and listen. Sometimes the stories were painful. Women abandoned, families broken, dreams crushed. But she listened without judgment. She remembered what it felt like to have no one believe in you. So she became the voice that said, "You can still rise again." One afternoon, after a long meeting, she stepped out to the small garden behind the foundation. It was quiet, except for the rustle of leaves and the sound of children playing in the distance. She sat on a wooden bench and closed her eyes for a moment, breathing deeply. It had been almost 6 years since the day she was rescued. She had tried many times to find the man who had helped her, but his visits to the foundation had become rare. She had heard he had gotten older, and though he still supported their work, he had started to step back from public life. Still, she often thought about him, about his calm voice, his wisdom, and the way he had seen something in her when she couldn't see it in herself. One of the staff members came running toward her, holding a letter. "This just came for you," she said with a smile. The envelope was simple, handwritten. She opened it carefully. The letter began with the same steady handwriting she remembered. "I've been watching from afar and I couldn't be more proud. You've turned your pain into purpose. I'm not as strong as I once was, but I'm still cheering for you. If you have time, come visit me. There's something I'd like to talk about." Her hands trembled as she read. It had been years since they last met, but it felt like no time had passed. Without hesitation, she decided to go see him. The next day, she took a bus to a quiet neighborhood on the edge of the city. The house was simple, surrounded by tall trees. She stood at the gate for a moment, taking a deep breath before knocking. When the door opened, she saw him. Older now, his hair gray, his face lined with time, but his eyes still warm and full of that same steady kindness. He smiled softly. "You came." "Of course," she said, her voice catching slightly. "How could I not?" He led her inside. The house was filled with photographs, not of fame or luxury, but of people. Mothers, children, volunteers, and the Foundation's family. "I see you've built something much bigger than I ever did," he said, pouring her tea. "That was always the goal," she laughed softly. "I just followed your example." He shook his head. "No, you took what I started and made it live again. You've turned it into a movement." They sat together for hours talking about everything. The new programs, the young mothers she had helped, the challenges of keeping things running. He listened quietly, his eyes bright with pride. After a pause, he said gently, "You know, I always believed that true success isn't about what you own. It's about how many people you lift along the way. And you've lifted many." She looked down, fighting tears. "You taught me how." He smiled faintly. "Then my work is done." They sat in silence for a while. Outside, the sunlight shifted across the floor. It was one of those moments that didn't need many words, just presence. Before she left, he handed her a small box. Inside was a simple silver bracelet engraved with a short message. "Keep the light moving forward." He said, "I used to give this to people I believed would carry hope into the world. You've already done that, but I want you to keep it, as a reminder." Her eyes filled with tears. "I'll never take it off," he nodded. "Good. Promise me one thing, don't stop growing." "The world needs people like you more than ever," she promised. That night, as she returned home, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Peace mixed with sadness. It was as if life had come full circle. Weeks turned into months again. The foundation continued to grow, touching more lives. She began traveling to small towns, helping communities start their own support centers. Wherever she went, she carried the same message. You don't need to be rich or famous to make a difference. You just need to care. Then one morning, she received another letter. It was short, written by someone from the man's family. He had passed away peacefully in his sleep. She sat in her office, holding the letter for a long time. Tears rolled down her cheeks, not just from grief, but from gratitude. He had been the one who pulled her out of the darkness when she had nothing left. And even though he was gone, his influence would live on through every life she touched. That weekend, the foundation organized a small memorial in his honor. People came from everywhere. Mothers, children, volunteers, and even city leaders. Everyone shared stories of how he had helped them, how his kindness had changed their lives. When it was her turn to speak, she stood before the crowd, her hands trembling slightly. The silver bracelet gleamed on her wrist. She said, "Years ago, I met a man who didn't just give me food or shelter. He gave me faith in myself. He believed in me when I didn't believe in anything. He once told me that true strength comes from how we use our second chance. That's what I've tried to live by." Her voice broke slightly, but she continued, "He may be gone, but the light he shared still shines in every life we help. And that's how legends never die. They live on through the goodness they leave behind."